Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Stable Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Like always, Michael Pivia here, joined by me this time. They left me hanging last week, but they have come back to rescue me because, man, my throat and my mouth was just getting dry last week. I kept having to drink, and now that won't be a problem anymore. Back with me is Landon Oliver and Marcus, a.k.a. Culture Shock. You saw Landon Tuesday night when he and Jack Goldie were live discussing quarterbacks. They will be back tomorrow discussing wide receivers and corners. Don't miss that episode, okay? 8 Eastern time. Remember that. Lock in, okay? Live on all platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Be there. Be square. Have your food and your beverage ready. We're trying to learn draft stuff, okay? They got us covered there. Gentlemen, how y'all doing?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Obviously, it's a great night. Lovely weather out here. Got the hoodie blanket courtesy of my wife.
Yeah.
And got some low-calorie protein brownies going right now. I'm excited to get to those. So, yeah, I mean, it's we're full on. We're in the draft season. We're in the cutting season. We're into, I don't know, what else season you can think of. It's warmer weather season, smoke screen season. We got that going on the internet. Hater season all over Twitter. We're all kinds of seasons. So yeah, I'm doing great though.
Hey man, I'm good. It's good to be back with the bros. Talk some little football, especially Colts football at that. Draft season's almost among us. I'm excited and nervous at the same time, but hey, that's the life of being a Colts fan.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are 3 weeks away right now on my phone, rather, 9 or 8:24 p.m. It's 9:24 for you guys. By this time, in 3 weeks, we will know who is drafted at number 4, or if the Colts happen to trade back, we will know who is an Indianapolis Colt on Thursday night this time in 3 weeks. That what?
I said, or trade up.
Or trade up. Yeah, okay. I don't think that's going to happen, but everything is a possibility. So let's talk about when it comes to trade up or trade back. Speaking of that, what we're going to talk about in this show, guys, there's obviously a theory out there. What do the Colts do if Tennessee happens to trade up? What do the Colts do if Seattle, Las Vegas, if those guys happen to trade up? What do the Colts do? We're going to talk about that in each one. Now, again, Colts slated at number 4. Notable teams who could be looking for a quarterback. Seattle just signed Geno Smith to a 3-year extension, 3-year, $105 million, I believe. Still a solid vet, but this could be the time for them to add a guy in there, especially with the 5th-year option. Could be a good time to bring him in. You got Detroit. They're probably sticking with Jared Goff for one more year, trying to build more pieces before they go in on their quarterback in 2024. You got Las Vegas. They signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but is he the answer long-term? Are they banking on him, or is he going to be the mentor for a supposed rookie coming in? That's a huge wild card there. And then you got Atlanta, right? Atlanta, they're going to roll with Desmond Ridder this year. They're going to see what they got in him. Smart franchise, by the way. They're going to see what they have in Desmond Ridder. Chicago has Justin Fields. The Eagles at number 10. We're just in the Super Bowl. They have Jalen Hurts. They're going to extend him. MVP candidate. They're good there. Tennessee, the last one there that really concerns Colts fans, sitting there at number 11. Okay? You know, it's been reported out there. I forget who specifically put it out there, but the Tennessee Titans have been thinking about trading up with Arizona. Now, what does Arizona get out of that? Well, you don't get Will Anderson. You're not going to get Tyree Wilson. You're not going to get Jalen Carter. So are you going to miss out on some blue chip prospects? What will Tennessee have to do to get up to number 3? They're going to be jumping 8 spots. What are you going to do? And one of them, your division rival, who also needs a quarterback. So before we get into what the Colts must do, we have to first understand what it's going to take for Tennessee to possibly get there. And we're going to focus on Tennessee right now. What is it going to take for Tennessee to get from number 11 and number 3? Well, I'll go ahead and start this off, and then we'll go to Marcus and then finish with Landon here. What is it going to take? Well, obviously, it's going to be number 11, right? And then if you're jumping that high, I believe you have to either, one, attach your future first-round pick or add a player. And for Tennessee, I'm not, shaming or, trying to throw shade at them, but they don't have many players to be shopping around and saying, hey, look, we got this young cat. He's developing. Go take him. They don't have those. So the only blue chipper, Jeffrey Simmons? And are you giving that up to trade up 8 spots? I don't think so. So probably going to have to add more. But before we continue here, Marcus, top of your head, what do you think? How much is it going to take for Tennessee to jump up 8 spots? Because remember, like I said previously, Arizona will be losing out on blue chip defenders, and that's what they need. Defense, pass rush. So they're going to be losing out on that. What is it going to take for Tennessee to move up?
Well, I do definitely think it's going to take probably maybe to this year's pick and maybe 2 future picks moving forward, and probably a player as well. I know they've been rumoring Jeffrey Simmons to be gone in the future because they haven't seen eye to eye, and that's just pure speculation. But I do think Simmons will probably be a part of that package. We've seen Derrick Henry speculations as well about what they want to do moving forward because, the injuries are starting to pile up. His season last year wasn't so good, so definitely can see a defensive player for sure being a part of a trade package if they were to make a move to move forward. But Simmons is definitely probably the odd man out, and he's still a beast in my opinion, one of the best at his position. But for sure, I can see this year's pick, 2 future picks, and a player like Simmons involved in a package that can move them up to go get what they need to do if they were to move up in the draft. Pure speculation for sure.
Yeah, so really, to me, kind of the framework starts with a similar deal that was made just a few years ago, and that's the Trey Lance trade. So the 49ers, they went from 12th all the way to 3. Tennessee sitting at 11, possibly going all the way to 3. And obviously, we know the framework of that deal. The 49ers traded a 3rd-round pick in that draft, as well as, or in the next draft, and traded the 12th overall pick, a 1st-round pick in 2022, and a 1st-round pick in 2023. So it was 3 ones plus a 3rd. So they could probably, because Tennessee is 1 spot higher, you could probably turn the 3rd into like a 5th, 6th rounder, something like that. But I still think it's going to revolve around 3 ones. So this year's pick, along with the next 2 1st-round picks for them. And that's kind of, it's a little bit easier because, like I said, we've just seen a very, very similar trade take place just a couple drafts ago. So to me, that's kind of where this starts.
Yeah. And you mentioned San Francisco. I mean, what a flop of a trade that ended up being.
Well, we don't know.
That situation still has to figure itself out, even though there is some speculation. I'm not sure how legit it is. I don't think it is at all, but 49ers may be thinking about moving on from Trey Lance. I don't think you should do that. But again, I don't know how legit that is.
Well, he's training with Patrick Mahomes this offseason. So him and Patrick Mahomes are out there training together. So, and I mean, I was a big Trey Lance fan. I like Trey Lance a lot. I did think it was going to require some patience. I thought last year, obviously it's just unfortunate the way it kind of transpired with the injuries, which that's nothing he can control. So you would kind of like to see this year, this is a make or break year for him there in San Francisco if they do decide to go the route of keeping him. But anytime you're drafting a quarterback, I mean, especially one that young and one that high, you don't really want to. You don't give up on him 2 years in, especially whenever he's barely been able to play. Obviously, he redshirted his first year, suffered the kind of freak injury And like it wasn't like he was out scrambling, he wasn't out running. It was really just kind of a freak injury from within the pocket that it happened. Just had somebody land on him wrong, and nothing you can do about that. So the fact that like it still is as much of an unknown, but obviously the talent is undeniable with the kid. I mean, so yeah, I mean it takes time, and I thought they handled it well as far as the first season went with redshirting him. I thought, that was a good, and Jimmy G was a fantastic guy to learn from there. So I'm kind of curious to see how they proceed, but I'm not really ready to write him off just yet. He's just going into year 3. I mean, this is obviously so young in his career.
And it's another prime example, especially for Colts fans. If you're going to take a young quarterback, it could take a lot of patience. Like, you could have a road like Trey Lance. You could have a road like Zach Wilson, although I was never on board with Zach Wilson, nor did I think he was warrant for a top 10 pick. But because of the position that they play, they are going to be drafted higher. And that's what you're going to see in this draft. Guys like Hendon Hooker, I'm anticipating him to be drafted in the first round just because of the position that he plays. Positional value is just, especially for the quarterback position, you're going to see that. So for this, again, we're back to the Titans. Another player that comes to mind, and it's something that, Kevin Byard and the Tennessee Titans front office have not seen eye to eye over his current contract. And me personally, I stand with Kevin Byard. These were the terms that were agreed to. It is a new GM, but again, it's a contract that was agreed to. So no, you shouldn't take a cut.
This is a Colts podcast too. So if you stood with the Titans, I'm sure you would be not well accepted in the Colts community.
Well,
we don't ever stand. We don't ever stand.
I'm for the player keeping his money. That's what I'm for. But this is a guy who I think can be used as a chip to be traded to Arizona. A good safety duo like Kevin Byard and Budda Baker. That would be obviously that would be enticing to Arizona, especially how their defense performed last year. But if Tennessee does make the move, okay, let's just say they do make the move, and they're now ahead of Indianapolis. What should we do? In Colts Twitter, we know the world will be ending, but inside the front office, what will they be thinking? I did not intentionally mean to rhyme right there. I'm not out here spitting lyrics, okay? But that was the question. What should Chris Ballard do if Tennessee trades up? Me personally, you shouldn't do anything different. If you still, I think we all know by now how the Colts feel about each prospect. They're willing to take each prospect. They love each prospect. So, well, not love, but they like each prospect. Okay. So let me change my wording there. If Tennessee trades for number 3, I mean, we all know how Colts fans are going to feel if who is there at number 4 and he's the only one left. But let's just say for the sake of argument, okay, Colts, Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard come to an agreement, man, maybe we can't do it. Maybe there's something there we don't see in Will Levis or Anthony Richardson, okay? Maybe there's just something there. Regardless of who goes at 3, there's just something there that we probably just don't see, that we can't work with. So, highly unlikely that happens. But, just hypothetically here, what should they do? Landon, let's start with you. If they are faced with only Anthony Richardson or only Will Levis, and they have questions that make themselves, is this guy worthy of the number 4 overall pick? And they come to the conclusion, no. What should they do?
Well, I mean, Colts fans won't really want to hear it because it's just, I don't know. It's an odd situation. I think they like both guys personally. So, I mean, I think they would just choose the one they're higher on. But for the question's sake, say, like you said, say they don't believe in that guy, you can't force it. Like, you can't just force the pick just because you have to have a quarterback. I mean, and at that point, to me, you're sitting on a gold mine because there's going to be a team that does like a Will Levis, that does like, an Anthony Richardson, that are going to want to hop, Seattle or Las Vegas or like one of these other teams to get that player. So you're probably going to be able to sell that pick, trade back for like really, really good assets, still get a really good player in this draft. I mean, this isn't like a very top heavy draft. Like, there's not, I think I've got like 15 first round grades in this whole class. I'd have to look at my top 50 right now, but like, yeah, there's not really that elite talent pool at the very top to where I would feel comfortable just kind of like forcing a pick. Like, I would trade back, get assets. I think you'd still be able to get a really good player. Um, and you would gather more dart throws, which that's really what the draft is. I mean, it's throwing darts at a board and hoping one of them lands on a bullseye. So the more darts you have, obviously the higher chance you're going to have to hit a bullseye. So at that point, yeah, I would trade back, possibly look at selecting corner edge. You're going to have guys like Tyree Wilson there, which to me, he kind of seems more of a guy that would flourish more inside as opposed to just being strictly an edge rusher. But Christian Gonzalez, Devin Witherspoon, Peter Skoronski, who everybody's saying left tackle. I think to me, I think he has a chance to succeed at tackle, but I think he would be a really, really strong guard as well. I think he'd be a fantastic guard, like all pro level guard prospect. But you could also get, obviously, there's Paris Johnson Jr. out there, Jordan Addison. You could possibly pick him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, another guy that could go in the top half of the draft. You could solidify that wide receiver core for whenever you eventually do pick a quarterback, whether that is later on in the draft, like you said, a guy like Hendon Hooker, maybe a guy like Jake Hayner, those kind of guys that can kind of come in and possibly be spot starters until you're able to be fully sold on a quarterback and kind of sell the farm to go up and get that guy, which is something we did not see the Colts do this year. Obviously, they said it was kind of like due to time restraints, which this is what sucks whenever you have to hire a coach and whenever you're still hiring assistants and all that. Carolina was obviously first, in the door. They made the first head coaching hire, but the Colts were really thorough in theirs. They kind of got a late start, so I mean, they're still piecing together the staff. I know there's a few more staff positions that they need to fill, but right now, I mean, they're kind of really just getting in to interviewing these prospects one on one, spending a lot of time with these quarterbacks, and it's hard to trade up to number one, and it's hard to give up the haul that Carolina gave up to the Bears. Whenever you just haven't had the opportunity yet to get to know these guys like they are right now. So, yeah, at that point, trade back, get more bullseye, or get more darts, try to hit a bullseye.
Yeah, definitely agree with trading back here. Of course, we all know that they love both of the prospects. You can't go wrong with either or when it comes down to the decision because I'm pretty sure they have their film and their studies on both guys. But like I said, if they don't trust them, trading back will probably be the easiest option. Especially you get more value when you do things like that as well. There's a bunch of talent that you might miss when you do get a quarterback, and if you don't get it, you have a better chance at getting a double value position like a corner or wide receiver. Two things that we really do need adjusting to. We do need some more presence on the offensive line, and we do need another edge rusher, in my opinion. So a trading pack definitely gives you that value and that ability to do so. And you still have some type of structure when you're moving forward because you still have a good bridge quarterback in Gardner Minshew. So you're not really losing anything if you do miss out on getting Anthony Richardson or a Will Levis because I am a fan of Gardner. I do think he can hold you over a few games. You still have a chance to get a quarterback later in the draft that could be some type of product. It's going to be a chess match regardless of what you do or who you draft because you don't really know until you put them out there on the field with their helmet on of what they can do. You just got to give them time because all of these players have to develop. None of these guys are Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. Even they had to develop coming into the league. So it doesn't matter who you get. Like I said, trading back would be a bonus for the Colts because like you said, you have a chance to get a corner, and I do think we do need another corner because knowing us and knowing the Colts, they take a while to get players anyway, and they are stingy with money. So I don't know if they're going to ever get a veteran presence, but I know they're probably going to have trust value in Isaiah Rodgers Sr. I think we all do. It's his time to shine anyway. But drafting another corner to pair with him brings you younger experience, it brings you more speed, and developing, you have longevity with it as well. So I am a fan of getting another corner and probably getting another wide receiver as well. So if they do happen to trade back and not get Richardson or Levis, I think we'll be totally fine moving forward with the future because next year's draft is pretty good at the quarterback class as well.
So when it comes to number 4 for me, and there it comes to, if the Colts come to number 4 and they identify what Anthony Richardson's floor is or Will Levis's, for those two players, because we presumably suggest CJ Stroud is going number 1 and Bryce Young is going number 2. That's just what I'll guess. I'll just take a guess at right now. So that leaves possibly Anthony Richardson and or Will Levis being available at 4. I would compare these guys to a guy like Will Levis or to a guy like Will Anderson or Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson, but we'll focus on Will Anderson and Jalen Carter for right now. If you look at Will Levis or Anthony Richardson and you say, if we can get that guy to his ceiling, how does he project versus Will Anderson? Will Anderson, can he be a 14 sack a year guy? Anthony Richardson entering a stacked AFC right now. Stacked AFC. If you don't make the Pro Bowl, you're still probably a Pro Bowler because it's just so stacked at this position in the AFC right now, as to where Carolina makes the move. You're in the NFC, you're still looking for the guy in the NFC. Right now, we would say it's Jalen Hurts because you're the reigning NFC champion. But there is not the guy, which Carolina trades up to number 1. Regardless of who it is, they have the choice of anyone they want. For Indianapolis, if you think over the course of a 10, 12 year career, Will Anderson is going to be a better player than Anthony Richardson, you take Will Anderson. If you think Will Anderson is going to be better than Will Levis, you take Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. Because at number 4, how many more times are you going to have the opportunity to trade this high in the draft? How many times more, especially if you have these players that you do on the roster? You're trying to win now. So get blue chip players while you can. I would rather have an all-pro pass rusher than have a middle of the pack quarterback. If that's what Will Levis or Anthony Richardson end up being. Middle of the pack or a all-pro pass rusher. Which one would y'all want? I want the all-pro pass rusher. I want top-tier talent. I don't want to be just meddling in the AFC at quarterback. Me personally, I don't want to do that. I know y'all don't want to do that. So that's where the question comes. Who do you choose? Do you just take a quarterback just to take a quarterback because you need one? Or, because Chris Ballard has done this, let's not look at position of need. Where is each player ranked on our board, right? Where is each player ranked on our board? Where do we think with this coaching, where do we think that player is going to be 3 to 6 years from now? That's the biggest question here. Because there's a lot of things to like about each quarterback, right? There's a lot of things. We've talked about it. You and Jack talked about it, Landon, on Tuesday. There's a lot to like. So that's where I feel like is the biggest wild card. Where do the Colts value go at Richardson and Levis when it comes to comparing them to Anderson and Carter?
Well, I will say this, like, as far as like both those guys, I mean, like, both have very high ceilings as well. So, I mean, it's one of those where I don't really think the ceiling is middle of the road quarterback for either guy. I mean, like if you draft those guys and they end up as middle of the road quarterbacks, that's more of an indictment on the team and the way that they've developed them as opposed to the player. And I would also kind of push back a little bit on like the Chris Ballard kind of values best player available over need. We've seen countless times where the Colts, their first draft position comes at a position of need, whether that's at wide receiver, whether that's at edge rusher with Quiddy Pay, whether that's at offensive line with Quentin Nelson, the wide receiver there with Michael Pittman. I mean, every draft, their biggest position of need just so happens to be their position they take with their first pick.
I mean, Chris Ballard has also said the board fell that way, mainly Quiddy Pay, right?
I mean,
we thought Quiddy Pay was, well, not we. I was thinking Quiddy Pay was all going to New York until they wasted a pick on Kadarius Toney. But Chris Ballard said we had Quiddy Pay highly ranked, and we were shocked he was there at 21. So yes, like you're right, but also some luck in the board going the way. You can't pass up on Quentin Nelson when Andrew Luck is coming back from injury. You got to take Quentin Nelson. But you are right. But adding context that the board fell the way in their favor means a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. But both of those quarterbacks, like talking about Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, like the ceiling is so high for both of them, especially Anthony Richardson. Like out of any player in this draft, like regardless of position, any player in this draft, if that guy hits his ceiling, he is the best player in this draft, and he is probably the one that has the opportunity to vault you into that having that alien quarterback that you hear people talk about. It's you need an alien at quarterback, whether it's because you got to compete with Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, and Trevor Lawrence now is in the division, Lamar Jackson. I mean, I'm sure I'm even missing some others just because it's such a stacked AFC. But I think to me, like if that guy hits his ceiling, he has. I mean, you're talking about an MVP level ceiling. Whereas the other guy, I think Will Levis could possibly reach that as well, just due to the physical attributes and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean it's definitely hard. Maybe it's just me too. Like might not be as high on Will Anderson as most people. I've seen a lot of comparisons to guys, like Von Miller and like some of the other guys. And to me, he's not as good of a prospect as Von Miller and some of the other guys that were coming out. Myles Garrett, I don't think he is that generational talent, which I hate that word anyway. I think it's such a stupid word, but he's not that level of pass rusher to me. Now, to others, they have their opinions. That's cool. That's what it's all about. People have different opinions. But I just think the value in this draft, like anytime you have 4 quarterbacks, possibly 5 quarterbacks with Hendon Hooker added in there that have the potential to be franchise quarterbacks, and you don't even have to get elite play. I mean, yeah, is it nice to have that? For sure. That's what everybody's striving for. But if you just get above average to great play from the quarterback position, that is the most important position in football, as we know, possibly the most important position in all of sports. So if you can get above average to great play, not even elite level play from that position, to me, you can't pass that up. And with both of those guys, they have a chance to be elite level quarterbacks if all falls right, if they hit their ceiling, if the Colts do their job, players do their job. It takes a lot to get there, just from the player standpoint. I mean, even look at Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Patrick Mahomes pre-draft process. I mean, this guy was getting killed in the pre-draft process. Reckless, throws too many turnovers, can't read defenses. He can't play within the structure of offenses. Doesn't know how to put touch on the ball. Throws the ball too hard. I mean, I remember this guy just getting eviscerated, and he lands with one of the greatest offensive minds in football, one of the best general managers in football on a team they've been in the playoffs. Like he landed on a playoff team. And obviously he took that team to the next level and they developed him properly. He did his part as well in that. And, you kind of see that's what it looks like when it all comes together. Same thing with the Bills and Josh Allen. I mean, pre-draft process, Justin Herbert's another one. Pre-draft process, guy was just getting killed, you know, doesn't create, is too reliant on his offense, doesn't play in a pro style system, can't make the proper, half field or, full field reads. Josh Allen's inaccurate. He can't, he uses his legs too much. All that. I mean, I can go on and on about how these guys were viewed pre-draft. And it's a lot of the same stuff you're hearing about Will Levis and a lot of the same stuff you're hearing about Anthony Richardson. And the teams that they went to took a shot on that and took a shot on that development. And they took a shot on the ceiling that those guys had. And they knew, like, hey, if we stay patient, if we develop these guys correctly, because remember, like, Josh Allen, like, it was year 3 before he really, like, broke out. I mean, he was going into his 3rd season. There were people calling him a bust after his 2nd year. Like, he was never going to amount to anything. Patrick Mahomes, I remember the preseason, like, so he, like, started the last couple games, and I remember even the preseason games before he went out and threw 50 touchdowns. Like, he didn't play that well, and there were people like, oh, I don't know what the Chiefs are doing. I don't know why they selected this kid. And then he ends up having the season he had his first year starting. So it requires patience. It requires the right organization with the right head coach, with the right player, with the right mindset. I mean, it takes a lot to go right at the quarterback position, and for teams to land those level of guys. But I think that's what makes this quarterback class special to me, is that all 4 of these guys in the right situations with the proper coaching, they all have a chance to be franchise caliber quarterbacks.
In the event, if they do pass up on a quarterback, regardless if anybody trades up ahead of them, if they do pass up on a quarterback and they come out and say, oh, well, we just didn't think they were worthy enough of the number 4 overall pick. I mean, wouldn't that kind of be an indictment on Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter in your confidence in them developing or not?
I mean, some people could view it that way. Sure. I can definitely see a path to where people would view it like that. To me, I don't really think it would be. I think it would be more of an indictment on really, like, Chris Ballard, honestly, if I'm being honest. Like, it would be more of an indictment on him as a general manager. Just once again, playing it safe and not wanting to take the swing. Because eventually that's what's going to have to happen. Like, you can play it safe and you can wait for the perfect prospect to drop into your lap. But that's just not the NFL. Like, the reality the Colts are living in right now, and the reality they've lived in over the last couple of years since Andrew Luck walked out of that building. That's normal life. This is normal in the NFL. What the Colts experienced with getting Peyton Manning and going from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, that's not normal. Like, that doesn't happen. And people need to realize, like, that is just that's like a once in a lifetime type of thing. I mean, it doesn't happen. And what they're dealing with now, like, this is the reality for all 31 other teams that didn't look into those guys at the top of the draft. Like, this is what they do. Like, look at all the best quarterbacks in the NFL now. Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City traded up, took a shot. Josh Allen, the Bills traded up, took a shot. Justin Herbert, like I said, with the pre-draft process, he was getting killed. The Chargers took a shot on him. I mean, like eventually the perfect guy is not going to be there. So you have to trust your coaching hires. You have to trust your evaluations and, the guys that you put in that building to help these guys succeed I mean, yeah, you can't force it, but at the end of the day, you also can't play scared because, like, look,
Mm-hmm.
scared money don't make money. You're gonna have to take a swing eventually.
And another one, the Ravens traded back into the first round to get Lamar Jackson. So
Yeah,
you
exactly.
got to take one. If it came like down to it, and we always talk about these hypotheticals, right? Of course, I would like Will Levis if I could look into a crystal ball 10 years from now, he has a much better career than whatever quarterback is sitting there at 4. Of course, I would want to do that. But sitting here right now, you can't do that. You just can't. You can't do that. Chris Ballard, stop waiting and just take the swing. And if you're just scared of it not working out and you end up losing your job, I guess you really haven't been paying attention in the NFL that long for as long as you've been in it. So it gets crazy, but we all know that they should and most likely will take a quarterback. But should they trade back? We just talked about them still taking a player at number 4, not playing quarterback. But should they trade back in that event as well? If Raiders trade up, Titans trade up, man, we wanted Anthony Richardson. That was the guy we were wanting. Will Levis. Oh, they're getting a call from somebody. Someone wants to trade up. Do you suggest the Colts should trade back? Not trade back all the way back to 15 or whether no something crazy like that. But I'm not sure if there's a corner in this draft. There's not like a J.C. Horn or a Sauce Gardner or a Derek Stingley. There's not that guy in this draft. I mean, matter of fact, I don't really have high grades for this cornerback class, even though it is a deep and everybody has a chance to be good, to be great. As of right now, as a prospect, I'm very, very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tempered.
Yes, I'm very tempered to put those high grades on those players because I just watched the film. I'm just not seeing it. I'm just not seeing it for some reason. I just ask myself, what am I missing? What am I missing when I watch Christian Gonzalez? What am I missing when I watch Clark Phillips? What am I missing when I watch Cam Smith, Devon Witherspoon? What is it that I'm missing? And I haven't gotten there yet. So should they trade back? In the event they trade back, however far, should they take Hendon Hooker? Marcus.
I mean, if he's the last quarterback available out of the top 5 selected, I mean, you have no choice because this team needs a young QB. It's been too long, enough carousels. They talked about it, about getting a quarterback, and this is the chance you have to get him. So if that does happen and you have to get Hendon, you have to get Hendon because you need something to develop moving forward. You can't go out there and get an edge rusher when you still have no quarterback. And it's just a part of the process. You have to go get one eventually, and this is your moment to do so. So you got to do it. And Hendon, I'm not the biggest Hendon Hooker fan. He does have traits to be successful, and I'm not. And in a Shane Steichen offense, I think you can have some type of success if that's the quarterback you have to get. All of these guys are reliable options to acquire to have a team that has no quarterback to see some type of success. Because any of these quarterbacks in this draft is an upgrade from what the quarterback that the Colts had last year. And that's just straight facts. Because the last 3 seasons, the offenses for the Colts, if you look at the ranks, was poor. So you have to go out there and get a young quarterback to have some type of development and some type of structure so you can build around and gain some type of chemistry to develop your team to move into being a contender in which you used to be. So if you have to go out there and draft Hendon, I'm not opposed to doing that.
Yeah, I mean, to me personally, it would depend on where they are in the draft. I wouldn't for me personally, I probably wouldn't select him in the first round or even with their second round pick. Just because of how high it is. I mean, maybe trade back possibly. I know there's been talk about him going in the first round, and if he goes in the first round, that's great. For him, like I hope he does because that's more money in his pocket. And I'm always about the guys getting theirs. But just for me, I mean, that still just goes back to taking one just to take one. And if you're not going to take that shot at 4 with one of these guys with like the elite upside, then at that point, I don't know why you would take a shot later on for a guy that doesn't have the upside. I mean, it just seems like a waste to me. And I think Hendon Hooker can be a great player, but I think Hendon Hooker is, I mean, I think what you saw last year in Tennessee, I think that's his ceiling, which is a good player. But like what Mike was saying, like, do you want to get stuck with a guy who's the 12th best quarterback, who's the 14th best quarterback in the NFL? Or would you rather take your shot on a guy that is either going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, or in a couple of years you're probably picking in the top 5 again? Because to me, like, I would rather take that route. Um, so yeah, personally, I would not pick Hendon Hooker just because I think his ceiling is like he's already closer to where his ceiling is than any of the other guys. And it has nothing to do with the injury. Like, I think he's going to be fine with the injury. I don't care about the injury. It's just more due to one, the age of and like where he is in his development. Now, if Hendon Hooker was 21, 22 years old, 20 years old, like Anthony Richardson, shoot, even 23, like Will Levis is. Yeah, I mean, I would have no problem taking that shot if he was a younger guy. This is a guy that's going to be 26 years old as a rookie, and the older you get, like generally, like you don't get better as you get older. I mean, he's a guy that I think could play in the league for the next 10 years at a really good level. I think he could be a really good quarterback, but it's kind of like he would be in like the same territory to me as like Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, or like I think that's where his ceiling is. And to me, I would rather take a shot on the guy who has a chance to be, like I said, an alien at quarterback, like Will Levis, or Anthony Richardson's like the ultimate alien, like ever. So I would just rather take the shot on those guys than take a shot on a guy that possibly doesn't have that ceiling.
Yeah. I think I just had a thought on my head. A thought on my head. It was, oh yeah, every time I hear about the possibility of the Colts taking Hendon Hooker, or even just the conversation, you know what I always think back to, and it has literally no correlation. They don't have anything to do with each other. But I always think back and wish, man, I wish Cam Ward would have entered this draft, man. I really wish he would have, because I would have rather get Cam Ward than Hendon.
Oh, that's my guy.
Like, I really love me some Cam Ward, man. But of course, I think he made a good decision going back and, sharpening up his tools. But that's just where, with Anthony Richardson, like, see, I was talking about this with Kevin Bowen the other day. Just got on the phone, just started talking, and then it was something that he had mentioned on his radio show. I think it was his radio show, or I think it was his podcast. But the thing with Anthony Richardson, where people talk about his ceiling and talk about comparing him to guys like Cam Newton and all these other players, like, when you look at their college careers, like, you can't compare him and Cam Newton, because Cam Newton has a Heisman Trophy and a national championship. Anthony Richardson went 6-6. Like, you compare him to Robert Griffin III, he has a Heisman Trophy. Compared to Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was in the Heisman Trophy conversation 3 years in a row. Like, Anthony Richardson hasn't touched that level yet. And I mean, yeah, his roster wasn't like Stetson Bennett's roster at Georgia, but neither was Cam Newton's. Who from Cam Newton's team at Auburn is still in the NFL today? Who from Robert Griffin III's team at Baylor is still in the NFL today? Like, there is somewhere where college success correlating to the NFL is a big thing. His name, Patrick Mahomes, is the clear outlier here. He's the clear outlier. I was never a fan of Cliff Kingsbury. All the hate that Patrick Mahomes got in the draft process, I never agreed with, because he played under Cliff Kingsbury. There was no direction for that program. I also never saw Patrick Mahomes reaching this level as well, but I thought he could be a good quarterback, just not where he is today. When does that start to matter? Like, yes, we're going to talk about Anthony Richardson, but What has he done in college? Who has he beat? Nobody. He hasn't outdueled anybody. He got the chance to outduel people, and he didn't. He didn't step up to that plate. He goes to the combine, throws it against air. Beautiful balls, by the way. Beautiful throws. Beautiful throws. Probably the best deep ball of the combine. That's something that, entertained my mind a little bit. Marcus, Landon, if you could, what's your response to that? I remember having that talk. I'm like, you know what? That makes sense. That makes sense. Where is the success to build off? Because CJ Stroud has that on his resume. Bryce Young has that on his resume. Anthony Richardson and Will Levis don't. They don't have that. They haven't beaten anybody. And there have been other quarterbacks with the same type of roster they had that did more winning and more better performing. So it kind of like, oh, okay, you got me. I'm stuck in a corner here. Help me out, guys. Marcus, go first.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, none of those guys, Levis and Richardson, they don't have it, but even neither did Daniel Jones. And all of those guys, when you can compare, like I mentioned the other day, when I mention Richardson and Levis, and I always go to Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones was in the same boat. Nobody really was like, okay, he went to Duke. Why is he so high? But then when he comes in the Giants and you see his playmaking ability and how athletic he can be and his throwing power, it's like all he has the tangibles to be successful. It's all about that's all it is about. And then you've just seen it last year. The team that they built around him with Saquon come back healthy, and he can take it to the next level. It's just all about his athleticism and his abilities, his traits, and what he can do with it. Anthony Richardson, of course, he was 6-6 and all of those things. But when you actually sit there and watch the guy and what he can do, he's special. He's a special talent, and he showed it in his measurements in the combine. And if you put him in the system with Shane Steichen and a Colts offense, and you see what he can do and how athletic he can be, he's another dual threat quarterback, and that's something the Colts have never seen. I'm willing to take that risk to put him in that offense. And then when you talk about Will Levis and his throw power, that's another thing the Colts haven't seen in years, a guy that can put the ball down the field. And that's why these guys are so high in this draft, is because of the ability that they can do. It's not about their college success, because you don't have to be successful in college to be successful in the NFL. It's just about what you can do. How can you be mobile? Are you good under pressure? Can you escape the pocket and throw on the run? All of these things. Those two guys have two separate abilities that can take an offense to the next level. And I think that's why they are so high in this draft. And it's not about the resume. It's about what your motions is, how you can set your feet in the pocket. When like a Will Levis guy that's been seeing pressure all his college career, that can transpire into the NFL because the team that's going to draft him probably has a terrible offensive line. And he knows what he needs to do to extend plays, just like Anthony Richardson when it comes to him being mobile. So I think that's why they are so high in the draft, and I'm willing to be sold on these guys. That's why the Colts are in a pretty decent spot in whichever one they get.
Yeah, I mean, like college success to me, I mean, like, does it matter a little, I guess? But at the same time, like, there's just so much context around stuff. Like, even going, like, so even Cam Newton, for example, I know Cam Newton's the big example that was used where, he had one other guy on that entire Auburn team that played in the NFL. Like, it wasn't even like a big NFL player. And he carried that team to a national championship and won the highest. And then, like, I get all that. But Cam Newton was also, he played for 2 years at Florida, got suspended from Florida due to like there was some like theft and like I mean, there's a lot of you can read into it, there's backstories. Had to transfer to JUCO college.
Blinn College.
And and then transferred with Gus Malzahn over to or Auburn and then did what he did. But so I mean, there's just different paths for different guys, and there's different situations that they get into. Like obviously, like with Will Levis, for example, like the 2021 tape is much better. Still not gaudy numbers, which I know that's what everybody wants to look at is like look at the numbers and all that. But Kentucky, like we touched on our video the other day, Kentucky runs a very ball control offense. They run the ball a lot. They're not slinging it all around the football field in a spread offense where they're just throwing, four verts to all these guys in the end zone. That's just not how they operate. Same thing with Florida. Like Anthony Richardson comes in and he's having, he has to learn a new offense. First time playing with the head coach. Not only that, but then like there's his number one wide receiver was a transfer wide receiver. I can't remember what college the guy went to, but like, so I mean, this isn't like your normal like Florida teams that have these first round wide receivers, and I thought Anthony Richardson did have a pretty good offensive line. I don't think it was like great, but I think it was a good one. Will Levis did not. Like his offensive line was horrible. But there's just extenuating circumstances that dictate guys' success in college, and that dictates the win-loss record. And I mean, let's not get it twisted either here, dude. Like Cam Newton as a prospect, like if he did not have those issues and wasn't suspended from Florida with Urban Meyer, because he was the backup to Tim Tebow, I mean, he could have done the same thing at Florida. I mean, Cam Newton was such a freak of nature at the position at a time whenever college was really going through that transition into what it is now. Like it's just teams didn't know how to stop guys like that at that time. Whereas now it's very well known. I mean, like, Cam was like a pioneer almost. Well, I won't say that. Pat White was kind of the pioneer. Pat White in West Virginia was the pioneer to, that Steve Slayton, Pat White, the read option. I mean, and that was unstoppable. But even just then, like that was just a couple years before Cam hit the scene, and Cam at the time was just like a total freak of nature. And I mean, there's just like I said, there's context that needs to be added. There's extenuating circumstances for certain guys, and I don't ever want to use it as excuses, but I do think that it matters. And what would be the difference if Will Levis was at Ohio State and CJ Stroud was at the University of Kentucky, or if Anthony Richardson was at Alabama or Ohio State? And it's not always a level playing field. So I think you try to get in that mind of guys. You talk to a lot of people in the program. And Mark Stoops at the pro day, at Kentucky's pro day, this is something that he actually echoed, is like part of the adversity that Will Levis had to endure over the last season. And let's not act like he wasn't successful either. This dude took a Kentucky roster, like Kentucky. We're not talking about a blue blood SEC football program. He took them to double-digit wins in a bowl game last year. I mean, they won 10 games in the SEC. And this year, of course, a lot of stuff fell apart around him. And Coach Stoops actually like said something about that, where it was like, look, what he dealt with this year, I think it's actually better for him, as opposed to, and like verbatim, put the clip up on Twitter or something like that. I'm sure somebody's already put it up there. You can find it. Verbatim said, he wasn't out there protected by 2 first-round offensive tackles throwing to 4 or 5 5-star first-round wide receivers. So a lot of the stuff that happened with Will, he thinks is going to actually be a positive going into the NFL, where he already knows how to navigate adversity. He already knows how to, I guess, like really handle an adverse situation that most of these guys are going to be stepping into whenever you're picked that high in the draft, because normally you're going to a bad team. So that's what Marcus was saying. It's like, so a lot of these guys, they didn't have the luxury. Like for CJ Stroud, like as much as I love CJ Stroud and I think he can be a really good player, I think he's going to be a really good quarterback in the league, it's almost kind of odd to say he's going to go to the NFL with NFL level talent, and he's probably going to downgrade his situation. Like he's probably going to be in a worse situation with less talent around him than what he had in college, where it's the exact opposite for guys like Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, where they're going to go to the NFL and actually have talent around them, at least NFL level talent that just wasn't there at Kentucky or Florida this year. So, yeah, I mean, it's like I said, context needs to be added for sure, but I would hate to, like, I hate hearing like the Will Levis wasn't successful in college, because I believe he has the second, just in 2 seasons, he has the second most wins in the Kentucky program history at the quarterback position in 2 years. Second most all time in program history. Playing in the SEC with a less talented roster. To me, that is success. To me, he's raised the level of that program. And you saw it whenever he wasn't on the field. You know how many games Kentucky won without Will Levis on the field the last 2 years? 0. Not a single game. And so, yeah, I mean, there's different levels of success for different guys if you put it in context.
Guys, this is always such a fun conversation. And you know what? For 3 more weeks, we're going to be able to have it. All right. We are going to be able to have it. So, guys, thank you for listening to this episode of the Blue Stable Podcast. We're always having great conversations. Check it out again tomorrow when Landon and Jack return discussing wide receivers and corners and how their fit with the Colts would be. I'm especially looking for the wide receiver because he might have a fan favorite of ours on there as well. So Mark is over there smiling. Other receivers, I would say, like the ones that aren't going to be on there are the ones that we're not going to get that are going to be drafted in the first round. I believe so, right, Landon?
So we're trying to keep this more so we're trying to keep this more realistic as well as like guys that will be in the range of the Colts, starting in the second round, going all the way to like possibly the 5th round. Those type of guys that the Colts could target in the draft. Like, I mean, would it be fun for me to throw on JSN and Quentin Johnston and Jordan Addison? Yeah, I would love to do that. But just realistically, the Colts are probably not going to have a shot at drafting those guys. So we're trying to keep this more of a realistic type of scenario for the Colts.
Man, if you drafted Quentin Johnston, I think your shortest receiver would be like 6'1". That would be fun. But yeah, I'm interested to see that episode and the guys that y'all are going to talk about. So make sure you guys are watching tomorrow. They are going live 8 Eastern. All right, 8 Eastern. Him and Jack Goley. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week. Oh, yeah. We'll be back next week, guys. We'll have more topics to talk about with you. So, guys, enjoy your weekend. And again, happy Easter. And check Landon and Jack out tomorrow night. See ya.